Yes, you really can improve the lighting and the overall mood of your pixel art in Aseprite with only a few clicks, which allows you going from an image like this to an image like this. With the method I will show you in this video, you can also very easily tweak the lights of, for example, some street lanterns or any other light source in your image. Also, you can use this method to switch to a grayscale mode, which can be a very useful tool during the creation of your pixel art. In the beginning, the only thing I had was this reference picture. If you're curious, this is actually a shot from the series The Americans, which I'm currently watching with my wife, and when this scene came up, I instantly thought that this composition might actually look very nice in pixel art. So I started with a very rough sketch of the main components of the scene, which are the street, the car, and the surrounding buildings and the street lanterns. At this point, I was actually still going for this overall very dark, almost black lighting of the scene. But as it happens ever so often during a creative process, I accidentally filled the black background with red, and I immediately liked the mood that this created much more than the initial reference image. So I continued the image with a new goal in mind, namely to create a warm sunset feeling at the end of a long day in a big city. Which eventually turned out to be this. So the method I used here to improve the lighting, which makes the difference between this version and this version of the image, is as follows. I created two layers, both on top of all the other layers. One layer is used to give the entire image a more reddish color tone, which helps with creating the warm sunset feeling I was going for here. And the second layer is simulating the more yellow light that comes from the two street lanterns. On the first layer, I filled the entire canvas with one of the red tones of my color palette, and I did two things to that layer. First, I changed its mode from normal to color. And the second thing I did was I reduced the opacity of that layer to, in this case, 18%. That layer alone, when applied to the overall image, already gives it a nice warm sunset feeling. The second layer in isolation looks like this. So I drew some shapes that simulate the light coming from both street lanterns in the brightest yellow of my palette, which is also the color that you see as the actual light of the street lanterns here. And I also changed the mode of that layer from normal to color, and I set the opacity of that layer to, in this case, 21%. That layer, without the other layer active, has this effect on the image. And both layers combined give the final result that you've seen before. So as you can see, I went for a very subtle effect of this street lantern lights layer, just enough to give it a little finishing touch. But this is essentially an artistic choice, and you, for your own pixel art, can of course tweak and play with those values as you see fit. So with those extra layers in place, you can even add more such layers and more effects, and you can change the intensity of the effect by changing the opacity value or even the chosen color. As I mentioned in the beginning, you can even use this to create a grayscale version of your image, and you do this by choosing a new layer and fill it with black for the entire image, and you keep its opacity at 100%. And again, you set the mode of that layer from normal to color, and the result will look like this. This is a very useful tool you have in Aseprite while creating your compositions, because it allows you to easily check the overall color values in your image. And you can make sure with this that all details are readable and that there's enough contrast between the objects of interest. One thing to keep in mind when you're using this method for your own pixel art is that when you try to export your image with such additional layers in place, make sure that you're not in indexed color mode. Because if you exported this image while in index mode, Aseprite does not take the opacity setting into account, which results in a solid color being on top of all layers in your image, and the resulting exported file would show exactly that. So before exporting, just switch to RGB mode, then export your file, and the result will look just as you expected. And you will see all nice little details in your scene that you created, like these two silhouette figures in the car. Speaking of silhouettes, if you would like to know more about creating atmospheric pixel art using silhouette shapes, then you can watch this video next.